Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you all. Right off the bat, I want to set a few expectations of you. I signed my expectations. Actually, what I hope for in the future, if not today, is that as a congregation during the sermon, that you guys consider yourselves participants. That if you're moved in one way or another, you let me know. And that's not going to look exactly like a conversation, but it will be a bit of an exchange. So and it's not something we need to get down today, but I just want to put it out there and let you know that you are welcome to interject in the midst of my sermon.
Hey, my brother!
I don't need to say this every night. Also, that being said, I consider worship an experiment and an experience. And so as we go along, we will conduct worshipful experiments here, and some will fail. But because there is joy in discovery, we will cherish those failures, and sometimes we will succeed. So be prepared or warned for that. For now, all I have to say is that, my goodness, it feels good to be here. It feels very good to be here, and I would jump for joy, except that I hurt my back unpacking last week. Incidentally, my mom gave me a little pill to help the pain. I don't know what it is. So if I fall over or start rambling, or if the sentence doesn't make any sense, we know pharmaceuticals are to blame. But hopefully it's just a nice pain. So it's a joy to be here. And I can tell you that one of the reasons why it's so good to be here now is because in the past 2 years, my wife Katie and I have moved 3 times.
Wow.
Is that right? Yeah. And my little daughters, who are 19 months old, have moved twice in their life already. And so now we feel as though we are home. And that is an incredible feeling.
Wonderful.
Yes. It's been a whirlwind, and for us, since we left Austin 2 years ago, it's sort of been our proverbial journey through the wilderness. And I'm guessing that this may not be an entirely unfamiliar feeling to this congregation. You all have spent 2 years in your own kind of wilderness. I know what that's like. My home church in Austin went through a period of interim ministry. And as good as it was, I understand that there's this feeling of temporariness and transitoriness that sort of shadows everything that you do. But we are about to see the end of that. See, the wilderness has supposedly prepared us for the promised land, which is just around the corner. And that is one thing I can guarantee. The promised land is just around the corner. The promised land is always actually that's not entirely true, but it is also true. Because it is also true that we are already in the promised land. Because you have always already been in the promised land. See, the promised land and the wilderness are one and the same. Promised land and the whirlwind are one and the same. And for this, after the long, arduous march through the past 2 years, for this, I feel like sobbing. And for this, I also feel like celebrating. And for this, we worship together and wonder about the heavens and the heart. For in the midst of the wilderness, in the howl of the whirlwind, we now see that there is opportunity. In the wilderness, there is still grace. For despite and due to the rancor, there is evolution. And despite and due to the rancor, there is learning. So here is something that I learned from my time in the whirlwind wilderness. And this may sound really obvious, but it's pertinent because we are gathered here as a religious people. I've learned that it is not easy to live into your spiritual ideal when you are in pain. It's not easy to be kind when you're tired. It's not easy to feel that connection with God or a connection with goodness when your house or your body is in upheaval or in need of repair. And while I can easily identify all the things and people and circumstances to and for which I am grateful, I've learned that it's hard to feel that gratitude as thoroughly as I'd like, because gratitude feels really good. But it's hard to feel that gratitude as much as I'd like when you're in the midst of the whirlwind and laboring in the wilderness. So I'm talking about me. I'm also talking about you all, right? And from those lessons, I can draw a few conclusions. First, when the goal is to develop your spiritual nature, when the hope is to cultivate wisdom and demonstrate kindness, when the aspiration is to find connection with the thou that is within and greater than you and all that is around you, when these are your heart's hope, then it helps to have a sense of pattern and structure. It helps to have a sense of home. This is what we yearn for in the whirlwind and what we seek in the wilderness. A home, a society, a structure. When we endeavor to create a sense of wholeness and connection, it helps to not be in the full tumult of the whirlwind. It helps to not be in the wilderness, and not so much for safety's sake, but for the sake of strength. And this is what you and I have been working on and working toward these past 2 years. Of course, another conclusion is that the wilderness whirlwind is just another way of saying life. We already always are in the promised land. So it turns out that life is the process of erecting castles of sand in a tornado. And then we're back to perpetually seeking wholeness and connection while in pain and while tired and while in need of repair and incapable of indulging our gratitude. That's where we live. So is the endeavor toward wholeness and connection a ridiculous quest? Consider the life around you. The plants and animals of our planet you will see a fierce drive toward organization. And it's larger than the individual lives that you see. And if you take a step back farther, you can see this organic organization occurring over time. And in terms of life, this organization over time is called evolution. Evolution is the process of organizing biology, but imperfectly, or at least incompletely. The evolutionary next step is always brought out by an incompleteness in the present organization, and then the subsequent reorganization around a development arising from that incompleteness. So, if incompleteness accounts for evolutionary creativity, I must think that organization accounts for the power and the platform from and within which evolution occurs. So if life is a whirlwind, it still needs structure. The whirlwind needs structure. It needs stabilization, if only to have a field in which to play. And perhaps then the converse is true, that structure needs the whirlwind. Home needs the wilderness. All of which is a fairly roundabout and quasi-scientific way to frame the truth that the pattern and the pattern-wrecking whirlwind are so interdependent as to be one and the same, different components of the same event. And so what do we do with that? What do we do with that as a church? Setting aside the cosmic scale, we're talking about a church and a minister hoping to create a place of strength together. Well, for one, we can observe that it's not just us. We are a mess, and we make a mess. But so does the basis of existence itself. Right? So, for one thing, this leads me to believe that the universe needs a good therapist. And also a good church. Probably universalist. It's only logical. So the scale tells us that it's not just us. And we can also appreciate that our time in the wilderness, our time in the whirlwind was difficult, but it was also refining. We can embrace the fact that our attempts at structure are finally futile, but immediately necessary. And subsequently, we can observe that passivity in the face of the whirlwind wilderness, that abandoning our quest for structure, however futile that quest may be, abandoning it is opting out of the process of evolution, opting out of creation, and opting out of life itself. And you all have worked and struggled and hoped and dreamed and shared in order to stabilize yourselves as a body of people, to create a home. You have done the work. You were aided in that work by a fine interim minister. You've stayed together and refined yourselves for 2 years, where the sense of wilderness and whirlwind were relatively higher than is comfortable. And in the midst of that, you began to create rhythms and patterns and structure and intent. And now, because of that work, you are new again. For the myth of the wilderness is, after all, also the myth of resurrection, reincarnation. So you've done the work, and I've done the work, and now here we are, still in the wilderness. Always and forever in the wilderness, but with a difference. For now we are strong. Now we are new. And we are new and strong because we have built some fortification. And this fortification ultimately is about relationships. And we owe some gratitude to the whirlwind, for the whirlwind itself has brought about this fortification. It fostered and even required relationships. We do not need to pretend our fortification, our relationships are impervious or perpetual. We are strong enough to concede and forgive. We know how to repair ourselves. We can now refortify. And that is what strength is, and it's a beautiful thing. There's more. For within this organization, we may now pursue that which we have yearned for these past few years. Within this skeleton, this rhythm, our souls may flourish. And so I would like to invite you, or perhaps it is you who have invited me, to join on a journey, our next journey. Because after 2 years, I am hungry to pursue a life of wholeness and connectivity. I am ready to cultivate wisdom and kindness. I want to live my spiritual ideal. I want to find connection with God or with goodness, and I want to indulge my sense of gratitude until I feel it in my very bones, and I feel those bones open and rise. I'm ready to pursue these things in the midst of pain and tiredness and need. And I know I can, and I know you can, because I and you and we together have a rhythm, a structure, the home in which to do this. I and you and we together make a spiritual home. So let's do this. How do we start? Of course, you've started already. I've been following the conversations of the stewardship committee and of the board. And the words and perspectives that have been permeating these recent conversations are already leaning into wholeness and connectivity, already leaning into gratitude. For my part, during this first month, I would very much like to attend every committee meeting that occurs in relation to this church.
Oh, yeah.
Let me go back and reemphasize the first part of that story. So this month, seriously, I would. So you give me some advance notice and please invite me. I want to give a comprehensive view of Mountain Vista. And in the future, of course, I'll have to probably trim that tree a little bit. But I want to at least be in the conversation. So please do invite me. You know, and more than inviting me, right? I think that what we can do is continually invite each other, not so much to committee meetings, although they're fun and important. That was not a joke.
I believe.
Listen to the first paragraph of the sermon. So yes, to committee meetings, yes, but also to invite each other to live into our spiritual ideal. Invite each other to cultivate that sense of kindness and wisdom and connectivity. I mean, just the invitation is powerful and transformative, both to the person being invited and to the person doing the inviting. And so I would like to do that right now. I would like for you, in fact, to do that right now. So if you could, turn to a neighbor, find a neighbor, turn to a neighbor. And you could use these words or you could use your own, right? But I'd like you to invite that neighbor to live into their spiritual ideal. Invite that neighbor to live into and cultivate a sense of kindness and wisdom and a connectivity to God or goodness, and to indulge your gratitude. So however you want to phrase that, if you would, take a minute, turn to a neighbor and invite them to live into their spiritual ideal.
It's over?
Enough spiritual ideals. We gotta pass the collection plate now. All right, so the title of today's sermon was The First Kiss. And that was going to be my metaphorical lens through which to talk about the excitement of new beginnings. I did not do that. You all will have to be satisfied with a less metaphorical and more literal finale relevant to this sermon topic of the day. Amen. So now if you will please join me in a spirit of meditation. We'll take a few moments of silence, and then we will sing hymn number 350. And for now, let's find that still small voice.